On the 11th of April 1996, 42-year-old Noel Anthony Connolly's life was cut short in Anthony's cutting, Bacchus Marsh, Victoria. Noel's body was found with more than 20 axe wounds, demonstrating what a vicious and cruel attack had taken place. Noel's death exposed a manipulative partner and her affair that ended in the brutal murder of Noel. Noel was known to be a kind and hard-working man. He was a car enthusiast and a devoted father of 2 children. He lived with his long-term partner, Ivy Waite, and he thought that they were in a happy relationship. But all was not as it appeared. Noel and Ivy were attending an adult education centre, and it was here that Ivy met the people that would end Noel's life. While Noel was working, Ivy had begun having an affair with 28-year-old John Bewley Evans, who had an intellectual disability. Ivy capitalised on this and manipulated John by telling him that Noel beat her and the children and poured hot water on them. Driven by his infatuation with Ivy, John confided in his brother-in-law, Keith Baskin, 33, recounting these fabricated tales. Keith, haunted by his own traumatic childhood, was triggered to save Ivy and her children. He had a history of violence, having received a suspended sentence in 1990 for attacking someone with a hammer after being told that his victim was abusing his own wife and son. Fueled by his own demons, Keith was determined to make Noel suffer. Inspector Bernie Edwards, who was investigating the case at the time, stated, "John just wanted to bash Noel, but Keith, who had never met him, was far nastier and said, 'Why bash him? I'll kill him.'" On the night of the murder, John and Keith convinced Noel to come and assist them in picking up some car parts and then staged a breakdown in Anthony's cutting. When Noel offered to check the engine, Keith attacked him with a tomahawk that had been hidden in the car boot. Noel suffered over 20 wounds, primarily to his head, neck and hands, indicating a desperate attempt to defend himself. His body was later dumped in nearby bushes. John dropped Keith off at home before heading over to inform Ivy of the murder. Instead of mourning, Ivy and John gathered friends, bought champagne and celebrated Noel's death. Witnesses later recounted John holding a champagne bottle out of the car window, shouting, "Let's celebrate." The following morning, a farmer and his son discovered Noel's mutilated body, prompting a 6-month investigation. Ivy initially feigned shock when she was informed of Noel's murder by the police, but through great police work, officers were able to make a breakthrough. One woman's unusual fixation on the brutality of the crime raised suspicions, leading her to provide a new statement implicating Keith and John. During police interviews, both men blamed each other. John claimed that Keith alone was the attacker, while Keith claimed that he left to urinate before the attack, returning to find John striking Noel with the axe. However, this story unravelled when police presented the murder weapon, prompting Keith to claim that when he returned from urinating, he was given the axe, but that he only struck Noel once to the jaw and twice to the throat. Police dismissed this account, noting that the steep and dangerous terrain that he claimed to have crossed to urinate would have been near impossible in the dark. Both men were tried separately in the Supreme Court. The jury in Keith's case visited the crime scene, where they rejected his account of events once they saw the steep terrain surrounding the murder scene. In 1998, Keith was sentenced to 16 years in prison with a minimum of 12 years, while John received 14 years with a minimum of 9.5 years. But what about the alleged instigator of this murder? Ivy, described by the judge as manipulative, never faced charges. Although she had planted the idea of violence in John's mind, there was no evidence that she directly ordered Noel's murder. Shortly after the killing, Ivy attempted to claim thousands of dollars in crime compensation as Noel's de facto partner. However, after police informed her of their evidence, including the champagne celebration, she quietly dropped her claim.